ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जना शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Manupeta Apeta Kutyam Rapayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Utretitan Maitaya Taravo Binedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshay Kiptastakamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapana Vrinde Namaste Charanara Vindam Tavevasmi Najivami Tvayavina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we are going to continue hearing the beautiful Sri Chaitanya Bhagavata. And as always, we begin by offering our most humble obeisance, respectful, grateful obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanita Leda Vishnu Om Vishnu Pada Sto Tatsat Sri Simad Abhaya Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanita Leda Vishnu Om Vishnu Pada Sto Tatsat Sri Simad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Raj, unto our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga, and unto all the assembled Vaisnavas and Vaishnavis. Okay, so we left off with hearing the prayers of Jagai and Madhai, offering special glorification to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the most merciful incarnation, and by giving comparison to so many other persons in history whose stories are explained in the Bhagavatam, who were delivered by the Lord, but with extenuating circumstances, right? That made it not as amazing as the deliverance of Jagai and Madhai. They had had prior contact with the Lord, or had always been thinking of him out of fear or anger, right? So many different things. But Jagai and Madhai had nothing going for them. They were absolutely atrocious, despicable, fallen personalities who had no contact and from all points of view had no qualification at all, except one. They were the most fallen, and Mahaprabhu has come to deliver the most fallen, and he's proving that. Not just during his time, but now generation after generation, especially after the arrival of Srila Prabhupada in the Western world, we're seeing Mahaprabhu's movement definitely going out to the most fallen. So after all of that, then they begin kirtan, right? So, Shuniya Prabhuda Vakya Sabara Ulas Mahanande Hoila Kirtana Parakash. Hearing the Lord's words, everyone became jubilant. They then began to perform kirtan in ecstasy. What were those words? Mahaprabhu spoke after these two personalities had spoken. It was very interesting. Just to recap, so we have the context. Mahaprabhu wanted to show them that he indeed had taken the sins. So he showed himself in a blackish color, which ordinarily would represent, he's absorbed all this sin, look what's happening. Of course, the Lord is completely transcendental in all cases, and this is just an excuse to show his associates his identity also as Sri Krishna, And Advaita Acharya said the same thing. You look just like Sri Gokula Chandra, right? And Vishwambara, Lord Chaitanya, smiles. All the devotees chant the names of Hari. And then Mahaprabhu says, oh, look, these two sinners are black. Perform kirtan so that their sins take shelter in those who blaspheme. And we had a whole discussion that be very careful in your devotional life, right? Don't blaspheme devotees. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in that article that we referenced, Vaisnava Ninda, that ways that you can criticize a Vaishnava inappropriately are to criticize one who may exhibit some fault momentarily during the time while they're making progress, right? They're engaged in sadhana, they're not perfected yet, but they're making progress, yeah? So don't focus on that. Or if you focus on something that they did before they became a Vaishnava, and thus criticize them in that way. And then even somebody who's on a very high platform, because of circumstance or just because of being in a body, something might come up. And this is discussed at length in Madhurya Kadambini by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur in that Vaishnava Ninda article. And this is where that verse, Api chet sodoracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak comes in. Sadhur eva samantavya. That somebody who is my devotee, who is ananya bhak, always engaged in my service, it may appear that they have committed an inappropriate act, even a sinful act, but because of their engagement in devotion, and because they are, it goes apichet sodoracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak, because they are shown in their life to be very steady, ananya. This is just what we call a blip on the radar, right? Like we discussed the other day, a bite of a toothless snake. They have already gone so far in their bhakti and their purification, but sometimes a snake, even though his fangs are removed, the poison's out, he's going to continue to act as if he were poisonous, like a snake, right? And Krishna says, I don't consider that. I consider their bhakti. Now that doesn't excuse, this is a very misused verse also, people that are not Ananya Bhak are engaging in sinful activity on the strength of appearing like devotees, on the strength of chanting the holy name, and they abuse their position or their identity as a devotee, and then they commit sinful activity and maybe repeatedly, and they try to take shelter of that verse. No, that's not what it is meant for. That's not what it's meant for. So, he said in his purport, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati explained, Jagai Mare will be delivered from their sins, but those who blaspheme, then those sins that they are identifying and criticizing will come into them because they're meditating on those things. Those things will come into their heart. So then, hearing the Lord's words, everyone became jubilant. They then began to perform kirtan in ecstasy. Natche Prabhu Vishwambara Nityananda Sange Vedya Vaishnava Sabha Yasha Gaya Range. Lord Vishwambara danced with Nityananda, and all the Vaishnavas surrounded them and sang the glories of the Lord. Vishwambara, the Lord of all, is dancing with his most beloved brother, his Swayam Prakash, his very identity, and his chief Anga, he whom is tasked and empowered to spread this mission everywhere and give it even to the most unqualified and fallen. They're celebrating this, that, oh, just see, now the real meaning of Mahaprabhu's movement has been shown. And the power of Mahaprabhu, the power of his devotees, is manifest before us. Just see Jaghai and Madhai. These most unqualified, most fallen persons are now Mahabhagavats Everyone is in ecstasy, and they're singing the glories of the Lord. Nachayai Advaita Jar Lagi Avatar Yahara Karane Hoila Jagat Udar. Advaita also danced. He had induced the Lord to incarnate and thus delivered the entire world. Advaita especially happy because he spent so many years observing Navadvip under the influence of the Muslims and the atheistic Smarta Brahmanas, giving so much difficulty to the devotees, and began praying and calling out to the Lord, now you must come. The condition in the Kali Yuga is such, you have to come and protect your devotees and establish the Juga Dharma. And now he has come. This has been realized. And, because we saw that pastime of the Lord revealing himself to everyone as that Yuga avatar. And now, shortly after, showing this extraordinary pastime. And not doing it directly himself, but by doing it through his empowered representative, which is also important. It's not just that the Lord can do it. Those whom the Lord has chosen to spread his message, they are empowered. And that is the message for this worldwide, broader Sankirtan movement that is growing around the world. Right? That those who are steeped in devotion to Hari, Guru, and Vaisnavas will become empowered, right, to perform this. So, as they performed kirtan, everyone clapped their hands and danced jubilantly. They felt no fear as they bumped into the Lord thousands of times in their ecstasy. So it's like one of those mad collections, of dancers. Nobody knows who's who, what's what. They've all lost their mind in transcendental ecstasy. They're just jostling and bumping into each other. Even the Lord is being bumped into. No awe and reverence here. Simply sweetness and munificence, madhurya and audarya. So who else is there? Vadu sange deke ai garer bitare. Vasya ba saye ai ananda sagare. Mother Shachi and her daughter-in-law floated in an ocean of ecstasy as they watched everything from within the house. Because they're at Mahaprabhu's house, right? So not inside, it would be too small. They didn't have these McMansions in those days. Well, some did, but they're living like simple Brahmanas. But the courtyard, right? So purport by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he says, from within the house, Mother Shachi and Sri Vishnu Priya saw the Lord's pastimes of delivering Jagai and Madhai. As a result, they became absorbed in ecstasy. So this happened very close to Mahaprabhu's house by the arrangement of the Lord, right? So both his mother and his beloved Vishnu Priya saw this. Everyone was filled with ecstasy after seeing this pastime. Their ecstatic love for Krishna was uninterrupted. So the devotees take joy in tasting the audarya, the munificence, the causeless mercy of the Lord, right? Causeless mercy. This gives them great happiness because they're not just absorbed in their own spiritual bliss. They're also, because they're tadatmic with the Lord and his desire, they also desire the welfare of the world. And so seeing this display of mercy, they're so happy. It reminds me, every day we see by the mercy of the devotees so many pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. Stories and other things are on internet, and you see Srila Prabhupada speaking with people who have come, perhaps for the first time, seeing the devotees chanting, and they have some exchange with Srila Prabhupada, and they say, my heart is so moved, I want to be with you. And Srila Prabhupada says something wonderful and merciful, and all the devotees become joyful. Because they're so happy themselves in bhakti, they want everyone else to be happy like that as well. Right? So then what? Yara anga parishite rama bhayapai se prabhuda anga sange madhyapanachaya The two drunkards danced in the association of he whose body the goddess of fortune is afraid to touch. Now, he's calling them drunkards, but I think now it's different. What kind of drunkards are they? Right? Before they were mundane, terrible drunkards. Now they're drunk on love of God. Right? If a person has become a Vaishnava, there's a debate that's going on in the Jaiva Dharma in the 6th chapter between smarta Brahmanas who are attached to the caste system, who think that that's necessary in order to achieve perfection, that one has to first become a Brahmana. And they become upset seeing that people, not only less than Brahmanas, but completely outside the caste system, like the descendants of Chankazi, who are Muslims, being offered respect and honor by the Vaishnavas. They can't understand that. And so there's a discussion where Vaishnav Thakur, he used to be sannyasi Thakur, explains to them that if one has faith in Scripture and Vaishnavas, then one can become a Vaishnava. That's the only qualification, not birth. And he's explaining even someone who was formerly a Yavana can become a great Vaishnava. And he offered so many scriptural references. And the person who's debating him, Krishna Chudamani, refers, trying to clarify something, he says, Yavana Vaishnavas. And Sannyasi Thakur corrects him and says, it's an offense to address a Vaishnava as a Yavana Vaishnava. They may have been born in that family, but they're no longer a Yavana. They are Vaishnava. But here, he's doing it so that we understand the pastime. Just a moment ago, they were drunkards. So whether he's describing them as drunkards according to just their previous situation to show the magnificence of this pastime, or whether now they're a different kind of drunkard, right? Because now they're dancing in the association of he whose body the goddess of fortune is afraid to touch. Mahaprabhu himself, Krishna himself. Madhya Pere Udarila Chaitanya Gosani Vaisnava Nindake Kumbi Pake Dila Pani. In this way, Lord Chaitanya delivered the two drunkards and sent the blasphemers of the Vaishnavas to the hell known as Kumbi Paka. Ooh, that's a terrible place. Kumbi Paka. Don't blaspheme. That will disqualify you from even the mercy of Mahaprabhu, unless you have great regret. Remember, there are those two personalities during this time, Gopala Chakravarti and Gopala Chapala, who blasphemed Haridas Thakur and Srivas Thakur and were cursed with terrible afflictions, leprosy and disease, and were experiencing hellish condition, fearful condition, and prayed to the Lord for deliverance, and he said, this is only the beginning, right? That you're going to have to go to a terrible hell and suffer so much more. But by going to the devotees whom they had blasphemed and begging for their mercy and apologizing, then they were delivered from that condition. But if you blaspheme devotees, it doesn't matter who you are. Oh, well, they're not in our institution. They're in a different institution, so they're not really devotees. This is a terrible mentality. Srila Prabhupada addresses this in his commentaries in the Sri Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction, explaining there are, there's this verse, what is it? Not Yashasti Bhaktir Bhagavata Kinchana, that's a similar kind of verse. It's the one, all right, it'll come to me, that one should not criticize a devotee who appears externally to be diseased or, this bad quality or that bad quality. Because a devotee is transcendental. It's like the water of the Ganga. During the rainy season, mud and foam may appear to be flowing within it, but the Ganga itself always is pure. And Prabhupada says that there are devotees, many pure devotees, in many other places and even societies And one should not criticize them, right, under any circumstance. By the arrangement of Krishna, devotees appear everywhere. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, early on, there's a description of the tree of Lord Chaitanya. And Mahaprabhu himself is the trunk. But from that trunk are so many branches, right? So many branches. And from those branches, so many other branches are coming. And we're in a very special branch of that. We're coming from Rupa Goswami, the six Goswamis, specifically Rupa, right? And our line coming from him, this Bhagavat Parampara, right? Narottam, Srinivas, Shamananda, then, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We can't trace a direct initiated lineage from any of them. Really, it becomes awakened again through Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and then Gaur-Kishoredas Babaji and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada had many extraordinary disciples. And those disciples also had disciples. And sometimes in our eagerness and our sense of devotion to our own guru, we're thinking to protect our society or protect what we consider the purity of the message of our guru. If we detect some difference that we can't reconcile, we sometimes revert to criticism of other Vaishnavas. Very dangerous, very dangerous. And some devotees, they rightly feel that we should be loyal to the institution of our guru. This will show our loyalty to our guru. And in many cases, that's correct. But something extraordinary has happened since the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, that because of turmoil in the institution, many of his disciples didn't feel welcome. In fact, they weren't welcome. But by that circumstance, they ended up taking shelter of other great Vaishnavas and received renewed inspiration and guidance. And so what you find is that in the institutions of many of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, disciples of our Srila Prabhupada took shelter. But what happened as a result of that? As a result of that, those disciples who carried that same sense of missionary spirit and desire that Mahaprabhu's movement be spread everywhere, took many of these other devotees into the West, around the world, following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, right? By Srila Prabhupada's influence, they carried his special mood, his special flavor of fearless missionary work, right? And since then, so many chapters of the Gaudiya Math now are established all over the world, and they're teaching the same thing. It's just that at this point in our immaturity, not everybody can see that. And so we haven't necessarily learned to cooperate appropriately yet. But we are learning. We are learning, and that's by Prabhupada's mercy. And that's even the disruption in his mission, even the disruption in the Gaudiya Math, part of the plan of Mahaprabhu, so that many powerful personalities, rather than working under one banner and thus perhaps being restricted in some way, limited by institutional considerations, then had the freedom to preach according to their own Vaishishya, their own speciality and their own talents. And thus we see Gaudiya Vaishnavism going everywhere. The seeds are spreading everywhere. So, Nindaya na badhe dharma sabe papalabha. Eteke na kara ninda sabha mahabhag. Blasphemy does not enhance one's religious principles. It only results in sin. That is why fortunate souls do not engage in blasphemy. Once again, Vrindavan Das Thakur, when is he writing this? He's written this, you could say, shortly after the disappearance of Mahaprabhu. And already so many things were cropping up. Apasiddhanta, Apasampradaya, and also this culture of criticism among Vaishnavas. So he's clearly distinguishing between that which is continually, authoritatively in the line of Mahaprabhu, the many different branches, but also the responsibility to distinguish between what is correct, genuine tattva, appropriate tattva, and what is incorrect. But over and over, he's pointing out, don't blaspheme. So that verse, blasphemy does not enhance one's religious principles. It only results in sin. That is why fortunate souls do not engage in blasphemy. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada gives a commentary. The devotees of the Lord do not blaspheme anyone in this world. Anyone. In his Bhajanasya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about how this tendency towards criticism, even to ordinary jivas, is inappropriate and unfavorable for bhakti, not just to other devotees, right? Of course, there's a difference in result. Blaspheming a Vaishnava, especially high-class Vaishnava, will result in aparad, whereas whereas blaspheming to ordinary jivas, regular jivas, conditioned jivas, will be a sin. But even sin is a burden. One who blasphemes others is known as sinful or irreligious. To attribute on someone faults that are not present is called blasphemy. Right? It's not constructive and valid criticism, but it's when you're saying something incorrect. Being induced by irrelevant goals, those who are unable to tolerate the glorification of others and with a desire to attack them unfairly, attribute faults on them continually. It's hard to read. Let me start over. Being induced by irrelevant goals, those who are unable to tolerate the glorification of others and with a desire to attack them unfairly, attribute faults on them, continually meet with inauspiciousness day after day. Right? So when you are not fixed on the ultimate goal of life and you have mixed desires, mixed aspiration, you may see this world in terms of friends and enemies. Right? And naturally, you're going to criticize those who are your competitors. And the quality of envy will come up, right? And thus, you see others, what is that? Atmavan manyate jagat. You'll attribute even faults that are in your own heart on them. And you know where you really see this? If you fall victim to reading political commentary and arguments that's constantly on the internet, because the internet is an agent by which people are using to create this mood of friends and enemies, right? They deliberately exacerbate that to keep people fighting with each other, so demons behind the scenes can focus on their own agenda, and which is exploitation of all those masses. So they keep them fighting with each other, so they can't see the reality behind the curtain, right? So what they do is that generally you see them criticizing others for what they're practicing every day. Oh, they're doing this, oh, they're doing that, but they're also doing it. And none of them can see clearly and objectively what's actually going on. They won't want to see objectively because, this person's on my side, therefore whatever they said, did, or whatever, it's got to be right. And this person's on the other side, so whatever they said or did, it's got to be wrong. No clarity, right? So, being induced by irrelevant goals, those who are unable to tolerate the glorification of others, and with a desire to attack them, unfairly attribute faults on them, and they continually meet with inauspiciousness day after day. A person who out of envy attributes faults on an irreproachable Vaishnava must go to hell, known as Kumbhipaka, and suffer severe miseries. So if you criticize ordinary people, it's going to be inauspicious for you and difficult in your life, and you're always going to be unhappy and miserable. If you criticize a Vaishnava, Say hello to Kumbhipaka. Here's your ticket. Uh, whew. Those sinful persons who cannot understand that Sarva Mahaguna Gana Vaishnava Sharire, all good qualities are present in the body of a Vaishnava, and who consider that non-Vaishnavas are equal to Vaishnavas, can never achieve any benefit. What does that mean? If you read that Vaishnava Ninda article, also Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, who is a Vaishnava? And he defines the different levels. Vaishnava actually means one who is Shuddha, right? Topmost Vaishnava is obviously Mahabhagavat, right? Who is situated in transcendental realization. They are Vaishnava Tama. They are completely filled with the qualities of a Vaishnava. But even Madhyam, one who has come to the stage of chanting Shuddha Nam, Vaishnavatara, they have the qualities of Vaishnavas to, varying extents, depending how advanced they are in Madhyam. But they are also Vaishnava, Shuddha Vaishnava. Kanishta is a semblance of a Vaishnava. They're still chanting Nama Parad, maybe Nama Bas. Vaishnav Prai, what Nityananda Prabhu called the parents and uncle of Raghunath Das. They're externally appearing to practice Vaishnava principles, but they don't have genuine realization yet, which is why, even though they gave donations to Vaishnavas, they supported villages of Brahmins, etc., when their son wanted to go serve Mahaprabhu directly, they opposed it and tried to keep him locked up, right? I mean, you're living in the time of Mahaprabhu. You've seen him. Haridas Thakur visits your house. All these extraordinary Vaishnavas. You're living in Navadvip, and your son, who's been glorious from birth, wants to be with Mahaprabhu and you prevent it, right? That's not a high realization of Vaishnava, right? So that is not the same degree of fault, but still you shouldn't do it, because the Vaishnava Prai is also aspiring, right? So all good qualities are present in the body of a Vaishnava, and those who consider non-Vaishnavas equal to Vaishnavas can never achieve any benefit. So that also applies to applying the qualification of a Kanishta and offering them the same respect that you would offer a Madhyam or even an Uttam. Because sometimes Vaishnavas who are in lower grades assume the role that's generally assumed of a Mahabhagavat, like somebody may take up the role of guru, right? And be a Kanishta Vaishnava. And if you, no harm honoring that person, according to their seva, but if you honor that person and disregard a higher class Vaishnava and criticize that person, then you're not acting appropriately in any way, shape, or form, and you will suffer some bad result because of that. Prema Maitri Kripa Apeksha in the Bhagavatam 11th canto describe, and Mahaprabhu tells us to Sanatana Goswami, that the Kanishta, he doesn't know who's a Vaishnava and who's not. He may worship the deity and practice sadhana and bhakti nicely, but he can't recognize who's a Vaishnava. And he may disrespect real Vaishnavas. When you come to Madhyam, though, then your quality of discernment, discrimination awakens. And at that stage, I see who's a real Vaishnava. I honor them like I honor God. I show that they have prem. I show love to them. I serve them. Those who are also Madhyam, Maitri, I develop friendship with them and engage lovingly in devotional exchanges with them. Those who are innocent, maybe ignorant, but practicing or sincere, I show mercy to them, kripa. But those who are envious, I neglect. Atheistic, or even other envy, people who are trying to be Vaishnavas, but if they have a culture of envy towards other Vaishnavas, I don't want to be in that company. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be surrounded by that because I'll be affected by that, right? To criticize the behavior of non-devotees is called sad upadesh, or good instruction, right? Other than devotional service to Vishnu, all activities of the living entities are condemnable. Sinful people often engage in abominable activities on the pretext of devotional service to Vishnu. Instructions to give up these activities should not be called ninda or blasphemy. This is a clarification. It doesn't mean that you can't recognize bad behavior and speak about it, right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says that there are three ways where you can criticize others, right? It may be for their own upliftment. Hey, you're doing this and that. You shouldn't do that. Benefit of the person who's acting inappropriately. It might be that you're speaking to an audience and you want to instruct them in what is right and what is wrong. It's not all one. I'm all right, you're all right. Moral relativism is not part of Vaishnava culture. Just because it's your truth doesn't mean it is truth, right? One of the qualities that advances Kali Yuga is that unscrupulous persons, in order to degrade society, one of their things is to say and to convince people that that which is abnormal is actually normal. That which is untruth is actually truth. And thus we see, even in my own lifetime, the degradation of even normal education. It's not wrong to point things out like that for the benefit of the audience or the person that needs that instruction, right? And for one's own upliftment, you can also discuss these things. Because Bhagavatam, as it's said, right, reality distinguished from illusion for the benefit of all, right? This is what is described in these first, 3 verses of Bhagavatam, describe the intent and purpose, right? Vedyam vastavamatra vadhu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam, reality distinguished from illusion. So, other than devotional service to Vishnu, all activities of the living entities are condemnable. Sinful people often engage in abominable activities on the pretext of devotional service to Vishnu. Instructions to give up these activities should not be called ninda or blasphemy. Or on the pretext of this is, a real society, a real culture. We should accept all equally. Everything is okay. As long as somebody believes it in their heart, that's their reality and we shouldn't condemn. Even though these people are obviously in deep illusion, right, about themselves and about the nature of truth. Oh, we should just let it be. Why? If you have compassion for people, you should speak truth, right? But don't speak truth to people that are not receptive, because then they'll just turn around and criticize and blaspheming and dig themselves into a deeper hole. But to people who are innocent and open-minded, and for people who are actively engaged in the culture of spiritual knowledge, yes, truth must be spoken. And criticism of that which is improper can be discussed. So, Dui Dasyu Dui Maha Bhagavata Kari Ganera Sahita Nache Gauranga Sri Hari. After transforming the 2 rogues into Mahabhagavats, Sri Gaurahari danced along with his associates. So we have been hearing all about the degraded qualities of Jagai and Madhai, but they're Mahabhagavats. You're not supposed to criticize somebody for qualities they had before, but because it's instructional, it can be done. It must be done. So that, one, we can see what's right, what's wrong, and we can see the power and the glory of bhakti, of the holy name, the mercy of devotees, all these important lessons. And overwhelmed from dancing, Lord Vishwambara sat down and all the devotees sat around him. So now he's going to sit down, he's going to come back into external consciousness, and he's going to instruct everyone about this Leela. And we'll begin that tomorrow, verse 315 and 316. So, feeling overwhelming gratitude to our beloved delivering Diksha Guru, the most merciful Nityananda Avesh incarnation, Srila Prabhupada. We offer our obeisance to him, to his very dear friend, successor, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And there are many successors. I'm not making a sectarian statement here. And to all the Vaisnavas, Vaishnavis, Gaur Premanande, Haribol.